Hello and welcome to the Tech SEO podcast. My name is Dan Taylor, and today I am joined by Genie Jones, who is the knowledge graph manager at Inlinks. Good
Hi.
morning / good evening, Genie.
Good
How are you
evening.
doing?
Yeah, it's nighttime here. I'm good, thank you, Dan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I think you're the first guest I've ever had in Oceania
Yeah,
in six
probably.
years of doing. Yeah, in 6 years of
There's
doing this,
not
you're my
many
first guest.
people around here, to be honest. I've been looking for for a few people to have SEO pub drinks with, but the
Oh,
nerds
I thought
didn't
you were
really get
going to
around
say like
here.
in general, there's not many people. I mean, you're just looking
I
for
mean,
people.
genuinely, yeah, there's like 5 million. It's like really insane. As soon as I got here, I was confused about like where everyone was, but it's actually quite nice. Got used to it now.
Just for wider context, Jeannie's in New Zealand. She's not
Yeah.
on a random island in an archipelago somewhere.
Yeah,
Um,
well, depends what you would I mean, that kind of is just some random island right now.
I have learned to not get involved in Oceania politics anymore. I once
Oh,
did
really?
I did a survey 5 years ago, and I put Australia in with Oceania, and I got a lot of comments from SEOs in Australia like, "Why isn't Australia on the list?" And I'm like, "I'm doing it by continent." Um, but
I don't even know. I don't know the politics either.
I just went by what Wikipedia tells me, and if Wikipedia is wrong, then they have an agenda against Australia. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and
But
that's not
that's
your fault.
no,
That's
and
Wikipedia's fault.
yeah, and that's probably a conspiracy theory for another day as well. The
Yeah, for
vendetta of
sure.
Wikipedia. So today you join me to talk about various things, but probably something closely being a knowledge graph manager. So
Yeah.
entities.
Yeah, which is actually quite a good run on from Wikipedia because it's very, very, very similar. So, yeah, entities and how they fit into SEO and what they are and what they do and how we can kind of use that.
So I kind of guess in true Kung Fu Panda 1 style, let's start at level 0. So what is an entity?
So, in level 0, I would say an entity is just a thing, a concept, an idea. It's almost like if a keyword had sort of like um, every like an article written about it, which is basically what Wikipedia is. So anything that you can think of as a keyword, the underlying concept behind that is the entity. So I always give the example of like a dog. A dog, dog is just the word, it's the keyword, but the concept is kind of universal, and that's different to the words because you can say it as any kind of different word in any different language. It all means the same concept, and it's all about bringing that concept into sort of machine learning instead of having machines learn every single keyword and how they fit into different things. So it's just a way to almost categorize information that is closer to the way that humans think. I would that's the best way I can describe it.
So I know in SEO land, I often feel there's a misconception that entity is more closely aligned to things like brands and things like that. And there
Yeah.
seems to be this need for to do well in the knowledge graph, to do well in search, you need to make your brand an entity. How close is that thinking to reality, I guess?
Yeah, it's kind of close. It's definitely true like making your brand an entity and having that, as a concept itself is obviously a really amazing thing for Google because Google's going to assign meaning to the word that is your brand, um, which is obviously going to help with authority and these kinds of things. But I think people neglect the fact that everything is an entity. So um, the things that you're talking about is maybe more pertinent to the entity process. So if you're selling cameras or something, we need to dive into the entity of cameras and expand on that entity in a way that Google really understands instead of expanding on your branding, which, to be honest, unless you get your own Wikipedia page or um, you really like dig deep into like schema markup and expressing that, it's never going to be seen as an entity unless you do really, really, really well for yourself. So your best bet is to actually take apart the things you're selling and the things you're providing, and use those entity kind of things to, I don't know, to explain and get authority.
Okay, so now that's interesting you touch on schema there, because I know in the pre kind of podcast chat that we had, you mentioned one of the attributes or tags in schema which you talk a lot about, and the kind of indication I got, where it was kind of probably misunderstood or misused, the same as attribute.
For sure, yeah. So instead of, as we know, schema, I think the best way I heard schema being described was code that describes code. And a really nice way to think about how entities play into schema is to think about the same as tag. So you can literally take, you can literally mark up your entities on each and every page that you have. So on your biggest category pages, if you're selling digital cameras, for instance, or these kinds of things, literally anything, you can go into the schema and say, when I am talking about this thing, and the word can be either thing, person, place, organization. I think that's it. Thing, person, place, organization. There feels like there's a missing one there, but that will be the main ones. When I'm talking about this thing, person, place, organization, which is called, maybe it's like a synonym for digital camera that only you are talking about. Maybe it's your branded like digital camera wording or something. You say, when I'm talking about this, I'm actually talking about the same, it's the same as, which is that tag, and then link it to the Wikipedia page that is really, that indicates the entity for that page. So you can kind of do that for every part of your website. And linking it to Wikipedia is like a safe bet, because we know that Google's knowledge graph is built largely on Wikipedia data, not solely. There's other things like proprietary data that they've bought. And I think also a good one would be like, a safe bet would be Crunchbase, and potentially like people's social media profiles, which that's not like 100%, but it's, if you look at like a knowledge graph or a knowledge panel, if they're bringing these ideas in, you'd think that they'd have like an understanding in the knowledge graph that they're kind of connected. So I think that's an okay one to also link to. But yeah, Wikipedia is a really cool way to sort of look into that schema. I write about it all on my LinkedIn if anybody wants to see just literally a copy and paste version of the schema, because it's a very simple thing to add to a website that actually just disambiguates loads of information for Google. But yeah.
No, definitely. So when you say proprietary, kind of in there, I think a lot of people immediately go back to sort of like Freebase.
Yeah, Freebase, yeah.
And different things like that. And I think another kind of thing just to sort of try on here is just it's how entities are identified, which is obviously MRAIDs, and between the MRAID and the GRAID, I kind of guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just you don't really even have to go that far. Like, you don't have to, if you're just a normal person wanting to improve how their website is being perceived by Google, you really can just use that same as tag in a way that like is directly linking keywords to entities, and that is the main goal. And all you need is that full URL where you would link it to. I'd say like the biggest thing that entity SEO kind of suffers from is jargon, and like people thinking that it's like this idea that's like completely unusable. Nobody's going to know how to use entities because we've just got to grips with keywords and all of this. But like, it's actually one of the easiest concepts, or it was for me, to get my head around, because it's literally just concepts and ideas instead of painstakingly like checking off a list of keywords and all of that. So it really is just an idea of getting the keywords assigned to these entities, and that's the best kind of thing.
I think with entities, and I agree with you, with the jargon is quite heavy on it. I think one of the issues we've had with it as an industry is that most of what we do, our output is judged as deliverable. So we have to then find a way to package and make that something which is measurable.
Yeah.
We have to be able to show a measurable or quantitative impact on
Oh
anything we
gosh,
do.
yeah.
A good literally last night, I had somebody who is working for a Canadian broadcaster messaging me, and we literally kind of like they sent through a screenshot of a knowledge panel for a TV show, and it had like the Watch Now and a link and like the Apple TV icon and the Amazon icon. It's like, how do we do this? And it's like, I can explain this, but the answer is going to be a lot of work, and you're
Yeah.
probably not going to see a reward on it.
Yeah, literally, that's the kind of thing is it's been kind of a nightmare for InLinks, like the company that I work for, to sort of get our foot in the door in terms of becoming like a not household, but like a SEO household kind of name, because we were really like we stuck to marketing as an entity SEO tool. And at the beginning, it was like we were a bit scared because literally no one was searching for that. Nobody knew what that was. People, if they did know about it, they were scared of it, and if they didn't know about it, they were too proud to come to English to InLinks and like ask about it. Kind of a little bit better now in that we stuck to it, and people are now looking for entity SEO solutions because like you were kind of saying, because it's all about deliverables and all of this, that but we're kind of realizing now that if you want to be successful in SEO, you have to look at it holistically, and if you're going to be doing that, you kind of need a tool that's looking at the very basics of where the data is coming from, which is essentially entity SEO. So eventually they'll make their way around to it links. And when they do, it's sort of like this whole new learning curve. But yeah, you're totally right. It's just there's this jargon that is almost like a barrier for something that should really be very, very simple. It's just I tried to liken it to like how a human learns is how entities are formed, basically. So when you're young, you understand the idea of like a dog. You understand that it has 4 legs. You understand it has these kinds of attributes to it because you see a dog. Then you see a cat, and you know you sort of think, well, it has all the attributes of a dog because it has 4 legs and it's furry and it's all of these things. But you have to know that it's a completely new entity, even though it looks and it has the kind of same things. And then in your mind of connections, you kind of go, okay, well, they're separate things, and you just keep building those connections. And that's kind of how I like to look at entities. Yeah,
So
sorry, just dragging on.
building off that analogy then, like with the cat and dog, would it be fair to say that rather than kind of understanding and learning that we have separate entities and things, and understanding and discerning, yep, it's got 4 legs, it's fairy, there's a difference between it, we're kind of looking at it a little bit like everything's a platypus.
What do you mean?
It's a mammal that lays eggs, it's amphibian, it's got a duck bill, so it's avian. We're kind of looking at it more as like a hodgepodge of different things. Because I know, and this is kind of going on to my next question, I think there's also a slight misconception around how like being an entity and how being perceived as an entity and all the attributes which are associated with you plays a role in general search ranking,
Yeah.
especially for queries that require trust or anything of a YL
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
That's that being your experience as well.
Yeah, so especially with like medical stuff, as huge one is making sure that the actual entity itself is linked to, sorry, the actual words you're saying are linked to an entity through schema, and also being backed up by external linking, which I think helps slightly with the external linking in a medical sense, for sure, because you have to back up these things. But yeah, I'd say that the entities are kind of helping for those queries where it's kind of how they're like, if they're out left of field, so they're kind of crazy. They still need to be categorized as like the underlying concepts, So by focusing on like really explaining to Google what your website's all about in a way that it will understand is a huge step in the right direction for SEO. Instead of like going and targeting these keywords and these long tail things that, you know, might possibly come up, you're much better off picking out the underlying entity of that huge long tail query that only a few people are going to look for. And you'll find that you start like ranking for a lot more organic keywords. At least that will be like the first thing you notice if you start improving your entity SEO, is like the amount of organic keywords that you start ranking for, because Google finally has a way to go like, oh, thank God, I can just sum this up and give that to this website, because at least I know for sure that they're talking about platypus, platypi. I don't know.
Platypus, maybe. No, so yeah,
Platypi.
it ties to that notion of Google understanding your source type, understanding your
Yeah.
objective, understanding beneficial purpose, and
Exactly, yeah.
that's hugely, for me, what I see a lot in where you have a query which is, I don't know, hiking boots, for example, is a good
Yeah.
query that I see on. Now that query has multiple common interpretations, some more dominant than others, and Google has to provide that mixing intent SERP. So if
Yep.
you're seen purely as a commercial entity, or use that term, like a commercial source
Yeah.
type, and it wants to rank higher in the top sort of top 3, 4 positions, more informational queries at a time, and then that's also why we see those intent shifts around peak areas. So
Yeah.
like results for Father's Day cards and Mother's Day cards are very different in the run up to those events, but
Yeah.
the rest of the year when demand is low.
A really cool thing that you can also do with entities, I think, in terms of when you're planning out content like that, is, and you don't have to do it with any kind of tool really. It's kind of just a fun quotation marks exercise.
SEO fun. SEO.
Yeah, SEO fun is to literally type in hiking boots, and then go through and try and highlight every single verb that is used around um, hiking boots, because really that's the very essence of intent in language, and that's how the in the knowledge graph these things are kind of connected through verbs. So it's a really interesting thing to go through and be like, oh, looking at how are hiking boots made, how are
Mhm.
hiking boots, how much do they cost, how much blah blah blah, and like going through that on just literally the first page of the SERPs will give you more information on which kind of direction your content should go in than so many content planning software, so much content planning software. And the great thing about entities is that you can literally just take the keyword and the verb, and sort of you kind of got the direction of what your blog post is going to be, and you'll be hitting an intent and like improving the authority of that entity itself by doing that. And then you could even prove it even more by, you know, every time you're talking about hiking boots, using that as an internal link back to like your sales page for hiking boots. So like attacking all of those verbs and then internally linking to a single point on your website is the way that I've improved so many websites. Like, and they think it feels like magic, because it's like, oh, you've just, well, that's all I do, basically, and just encourage them to improve the content.
So not only do we have now a nice segue into the next question, I think I now also have the title of what this podcast is going to be, and that
Yeah,
is attacking verbs feels like magic. Um,
attacking verbs feels like magic. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what it should be.
yeah, I can't wait for the AI tools to scrape that and try to create blog posts from that in the near
Yeah,
future.
exactly. With my name being Genie and everything, some sort of magic lamp joke could be
Don't
definitely in the thumbnail.
don't tell me I've got too far into the rabbit hole of being at the time of recording this as well. I don't know if you've had a play with Grok AI.
No, not yet.
It's completely unregulated.
Oh,
Like
really?
in the Slack groups, there are images being shared of very heavily copyright infringing images, and
No.
I've seen Winnie the Pooh with weapons. Let's just put it that way. I mean, and you've looked at it almost like a that's good artwork. It's
Yeah,
high
me
quality.
too, but in my dreams, but
Yeah. It just kind of like it's I don't want my characters and trademarks represented in that manner. You can hear that
oh
line coming out
god.
of certain suits. But like I
Yeah, we're
said,
kind of past the point of like talking about AI and ethics at this point. I think every time someone asks me about it, I'm just like, it's not ethical. We can try and pretend it is, but at its very core, we've just
the
stolen everything, really.
the thing I use whenever because I've had this conversation at a couple of conferences this year, there is an acronym in kind of developer world called
Mm,
picnic, and usually it's when a ticket is raised or a bug, and you might, if you ever see this back in, sometimes if a developer's a little bit sarcastic, they'll write it's a picnic error, and that means it's problem in chair, not in computer.
oh yeah,
And
that's so good.
that's how I'm referring to the whole AI ethics thing. It's the AI
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
ethical. It's yeah, it's that old Goldie Chain song from the early 2000s, isn't it?
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry.
I'm hesitant to say the name of a song due to anything picking up anything to do with that, but it goes, it's da 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 rappers do. I saw it in a documentary on BBC Two. It's Goldie Looking Chain. Everyone can
Ah,
Google it at home and they'll get some Spotify pennies from it, I guess. So, like I said, that kind of segues nicely into like I was saying about the usage of entities and different things. And one thing we discussed in kind of a pre kind of conversation was just
yeah,
around using entities and in entity-based internal linking structures. And
yeah.
this is something that you said you've seen a lot of success with, and something that us as
Huge
SEOs
success.
can work with.
Basically, all that Inlinks, prides itself on as a software is being able to take what you're talking about on your website, find pinpointing where you'd kind of want your users to end up, or not even that, but having a single spot on your website where that entity is explained to the best of your ability, and then having all of those verb related intent blog posts linking towards that page based on that entity. So you can have varied anchor texts that have the word hiking boots in it and place it back towards there. And that is literally the best way to improve the organic keyword rankings and how much your visibility is there, how much Google thinks it can trust you on information to do with hiking boots, because you are optimizing your internal linking strategy to provide information gain. And it's something that you don't really have to put that much work into. I mean, especially if you use using links because it does it for you. But like if you were to do it on your own anyway, you should already have a good idea about where you're talking about that entity on different pages and start to internally link it to one point. And by doing that, you'll probably find a whole load of cannibalization anyway. So it'll be a good thing to go through and be like, oh, I've actually already talked about this hiking boots cost in two different ways, and I only really want it to link back from one. Let's get rid of that page. I don't know. It's just a really good way to attack a website. From the beginning. Yeah, I'm really on the attack today, but you know what I mean.
So, so we're attacking verbs, we're attacking websites. I mean,
I'll attack anyone, me.
nouns and adjectives are cowering in the corner right now behind me.
Yeah.
So I kind of guess my last kind of question before I wrap this up is,
Yep.
what excites you about SEO right now? What do you have a conspiracy theory on moving forward? What are you hoping happens? Yeah.
I think what is exciting me right now is the kind of the death of the know-it-all, because there isn't any quick fixes anymore. There's no black hat. There's really nothing that we can like put solid information behind. And especially with that big Google leak of all of these things where everyone's arguments were thrown up into the air. I guess it's not really a tech-based thing, but it's now kind of an open playing field in SEO to go in and test your theories and um, have your ideas listened to in a way that maybe previously was a little bit hard, especially for women, especially for people who are kind of new to this industry. where they kind of thought that the rules had already been made and already been solidified. But now I have so many good like grounds where all I've done is quite a conceptual manipulation of websites. It hasn't really been anything like, oh, we must get rid of this text and do this and this and this. It's been very abstract. It's been like, oh, let's fix the flow of the internal linking and let's do this. And that has had just as much success as I've seen some really old-timey SEOs who have been preaching like against this for a really long time. So I think the thing that I'm the most excited for is that like the free flowing of information from so many different perspectives now is actually being platformed and heard. So, and that's a lot to do with like a lot of the groups that are like Women in Tech SEO, and all of this is it's been amazing. So that's what's exciting me the most about SEO right now. Not a specific thing, but like a sort of a feeling.
I completely am in the same camp with you on this.
Yeah.
I agree with you. When I developed the training program at SALT, one of the things I encouraged, so this was taking people who are completely new to SEO and ruining their lives immediately by getting them involved in it. And
Yeah.
one of the key things I always said to them was, if I tell you this, I want you to purposely go away and find at least 2 or 3 arguments which tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, literally.
Like,
Yeah.
if you read something, purposely go out your way to find a contradiction.
Yeah.
And even with a client yesterday, I was sideways asked the question, are we better moving this subdomain from a subdomain to a subfolder? And I'm like, you're going to find 100 things on the internet that say yes.
Yep.
You're going to find 100 things on the internet plus that say no. 9 times out of 10, probably yes, but you need to actually apply what your situation is on this. And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
because of how SEO is now turning, that's becoming more normal for that question versus I think we're seeing like you said, the death of a know-it-all. I think we're also going to start seeing the death of a one-stop shop kind of tooling system as well.
Exactly.
Of like,
Yeah.
I can open up this tool and run a technical audit. I can open up this tool and find out how many of my links are potentially poisonous. Let's go with poisonous.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's going to reintroduce critical thinking back into the industry, which is going to be good. And I think to one point you touched on it, I think SEO is just becoming more general, closer to marketing now versus a specialist
Exactly.
niche channel because of how Google, how other, and I know we discussed this just before, the kind of thing like whether or not like TikTok is a search engine, but I'm going to say other online discovery mechanisms and how people are consuming content is broadening, which was always going to happen with accessibility to the internet, better smart devices, just more people enter a market because more people coming online. It's I think it's an exciting time right now
For
to be in
sure.
SEO.
Yeah, I think so too.
But no, that's so bring this to a close. So that's all for this episode. Thank you again to Genie for joining me. Always quite late in her evening.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening back at home, or whether or not you're at home, in the office, in the gym, in the kitchen, or generally just screaming into a spreadsheet somewhere, trying to work out why something's broken. So if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow the audio version of this podcast on your favorite podcast app. It's on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher. We upload it to Spotify and it does all the distribution. So I've been Dan Taylor and Genie has been Genie.
Yep.
After this, I'm sure she's going to go attack some more verbs and websites.
Yep, for sure. I think probably attack dinner.
Attack dinner, marauding across the kitchen. So that's been everything for this episode. Thank you very much for listening.